My name is Henry Mayer. For about 15 and a half years, I was the chief archivist at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. I am now the senior advisor on archives to the director of collections here at the museum. I'm going to be talking about the Robert Max Vasili and Ruth Benedicta Kempner collection. The collection is significant because Dr. Kempner is a major figure. The positions he held exposed him to a great amount of primary documentation of the crimes committed by the Germans and their allies. The collection is approximately 250 linear feet of papers and photographs, audio and video recordings, maps, and three-dimensional objects. This is of great importance because of Dr. Kempner's prominence, first as an opponent of Hitler and the Nazis, because of Dr. Kempner's crucial role in the International Military Tribunal and in the subsequent trials, as Director of Research at the International Military Tribunal, as Deputy Chief Prosecutor, and as the Chief Prosecutor at the Ministry's trial. At the conclusion of the trials, procedures for the orderly retirement of the vast amount of evidence were established. We should remember that this body of documentation was not the property of any individual. It belonged to the people of the United States, on whose behalf it had been indexed, cataloged, analyzed, and stored. However, in 1949, the chief archivist of the subsequent trials, Fred Niebergall, issued a short memorandum authorizing Dr. Kempner to remove and retain material of an unclassified nature pertaining to the war crimes trials at Nuremberg, Germany, for purposes of research, writing, lecturing, and study. With this carte blanche, Dr. Kempner removed from the official files a large number of significant, original, irreplaceable historical documents, retaining them in his personal custody for his own use. It was Dr. Kempner, for example, who discovered the Wannsee Protocol, the minutes of the high-level meeting of January 20th, 1942, in which the principles of the systematic mass murder of the Jews, the so-called final solution, were established. This was the only extant copy. Dr. Kempner had discovered it, but had not at first shared this knowledge with his colleagues. Ultimately, when others discovered he had it, he had to make it available for the prosecutorial staff who needed it to build their respective cases. As a result, the Wannsee Protocols entered the public domain. However, Dr. Kempner retained innumerable documents in his private possession for 50 years until they were donated to the museum. In March of 1996, during the 50th anniversary commemoration of the International Military Tribunal that had been held in Washington, D.C., Dr. Kempner's former secretaries visited the museum, informing us of Dr. Kempner's valuable personal and professional papers. They urged us that the documents should be properly placed in the museum's archives because of their significance. This began an over 15-year journey to acquire what turned out to be a vast amount of primary documentation regarding the Holocaust, and to Dr. Kempner's important role in seeking justice for the millions of victims and for the survivors seeking restitution for the harms that they had to endure. The collection had been scattered among several locations, including his former home in Lansdowne, Pennsylvania, in a private home in Lewiston, New York, in a storage locker in Amherst, New York, and in a private residence near Chester, Pennsylvania. There are still other parts that are missing, and we continue to search for those items that we believe are part of the Kempner estate. I have a couple of examples here of original material that Kempner has in his collection and has never seen the light of day. This, for example, is the Kriegstagebuch Nummer 1, or War Diary Number 1, of the Befehlshaber der Waffen-SS in Ungarn, which is the commander of the Waffen-SS in Hungary. It is the first diary that they produced, and it begins on March 18, 1944, with the establishment of the Reichsführer SS, the office in Hungary, and naming Waffen-SS General Kepler to be the commander. So this is, in fact, a recording of the first day of the Germans' march into Hungary. And that particular march meant that in about 2 or 3 months, 600,000 Hungarian Jews were rounded up and sent to Auschwitz, 1/10 of the total Jewish victims in the Holocaust. This particular document has what's called a staff evidence analysis, and it's given a number, 1927 PS. Documents that were cataloged for the Nuremberg process were given numbers. This 1927 PS meant that this was found by Colonel Story in Paris, the PS meaning Paris Story. So this is a staff and evidence analysis of the document. You can see Kempner's handwriting, in which he notes that this includes the minutes of 28 February 1941 meeting with General Thomas regarding the drawing up of an organization for the economic exploitation of Russia. This is again another war diary for Operation Oldenburg, the economic arm, so to speak, of Operation Barbarossa, which was the German invasion of the Soviet Union. And if you'll note, on the 28th of February in 1941, the Grundlegende Besprechung beim Amtschef decided on the ground rules for the economic exploitation of the Soviet Union. This is an order. It is September 1939, 2 weeks after the invasion of Poland. It was issued by the Reichs Minister for Propaganda and Enlightenment. That would be Goebbels' ministry. It is the Reichs Chancellery's copy, and it orders the seizing of all radio apparatus owned by Jews. There's a letter that was sent by Reinhard Heydrich, who was one of the architects of the final solution. You can see in the top left it was recorded as incoming by the Reichs Chancellery. This happened to have been sent to its summer retreat, so to speak, in the Berchtesgaden. It refers to a wish that Hitler had expressed that all the cultural property owned by Austrian Jews be seized. The problem that Heydrich faced was that Hitler wasn't particularly clear as to where this material should be sent. So Heydrich is asking for further instructions so that it could possibly be appraised, inventoried, and stolen in an orderly fashion. It should be noted that original documents with a Heydrich signature are considered to be rare. So this is indeed a very unique document that was retained in Kempner's personal possession. Part of our Rescue the Evidence initiative is to raise the consciousness of not only those possessing personal papers relating to their own or their family's history, but also to those who, in whatever capacity they may have served, the causes of fighting evil and seeking justice, and we honor their service. We ask them to return these documents to their proper owner, to the public domain, so that all might use them for study, to educate this and future generations about the evils of hatred and genocide.